as a priest. So I thought this evening I would give you some insight on the more personal side of Jack. The side that his siblings and I knew, and the memories we have of growing up with this remarkable man. There are a total of 5 McEvilly children. Mike Riley just named us all, so I won't repeat that. But each of the other siblings who were too shy to speak up on a stage like this gave me some input about memories and whatnot that they have of Jack growing up and even in the adult years. So I'd like to get into some of that for each of the 4 of us other siblings. First, I will share some thoughts from Brother Dan. After spending 7 or 8 years earning degrees in music and being exposed to the carefree days of the hippie era, Dan decided that he was an agnostic. Organized religion was not for him anymore. About 13 years ago, Dan was diagnosed with a rare form of abdominal cancer, which resulted in 2 approximately 12-hour surgeries within a 6-month period. We could easily have lost him at that time. All of us siblings and brother-in-law Jerry, Kathy's friend Rex, we all spent long hours at the hospital worrying and praying. It didn't happen immediately after that medical crisis, but it must have been fermenting in Dan's soul for a dozen years, because he woke up one day about a year ago and felt that the Holy Spirit was telling him to come back to church. He did so that very day, and he has since shared with us that he came back to the fold, partially because of the way that Jack and the rest of us supported him during that medical crisis. He says that was his way of saying thank you to us, and I suspect his acknowledgement that there is a higher power up there watching over us after all. Next, I'd like to share some memories from Sister Kathy. When we moved from East St. Louis to Memphis, Tennessee in 1953, due to our dad's job change, Jack and our new neighbor's eldest daughter played an April Fool's Day prank on their siblings. They made pretend cookies with dog biscuits and bitter chocolate icing. Sister Kathy remembers that they came to her with a whole tray of these alleged cookies and says that she was dumb enough to be their first victim. She did take a bite, but only one, and spit it out and hollered at them. Of course, they laughed delightedly. Kathy thinks that all of Jack's cooking is fantastic, and I don't know anybody who would disagree with that. For many years before her husband, Doy Freeland, passed away, Cousin Janie had a Christmas dinner at her house. Jack always helped her in the kitchen. He learned to make some of our mom's special recipes, like a hot mustard and a liver pate. He would make many jars of those things and give them to his friends and family every Christmas. I think the parish used to auction off Dine with Chef Jack Italian dinners in the rectory. I believe Jack's love for cooking started during his summer breaks in Italy while in the seminary in Rome. After our mom was no longer able to cook a big Thanksgiving dinner, Jack hosted a dozen or so family members for the holiday. Kathy thinks he likely spent days getting ready. Kathy also reminded me that Jack had marionettes at an early elementary school age. She heard that the stage was made for him by our mom. I can still picture Jack performing a Little Red Riding Hood play with those marionettes in the backyard of our home in the early 1950s. I don't remember if they took up a collection for that event, but it could have been one of the first times he was inspired to become a priest. Kathy's final memory about Jack is that he's an adventurous traveler. He and Kathy and a couple of Jack's friends once vacationed in Mexico. One evening, Jack wanted to eat at a particular restaurant that was a pretty long walk away. Unfortunately, they arrived at the restaurant only to learn that it was closed that evening. So they went to another restaurant where they ate outside. The bad news was that cockroaches crawled over their feet while they dined. The 2 ladies wearing sandals were freaked out by this, but Kathy said that Jack thought it was funny. I guess that just shows you that not even priests are compassionate all the time. Now I would like to share some of Sister Sue's memories about Jack. Sue's earliest memory was being known as Baby Sue and being pampered and protected by Jack and her other 3 siblings. Sue was only in the 6th grade when Jack started at the seminary in 1957, so she didn't know much about his life for the next 8 years. After she finished college in 1968, she was working and living back home with our parents. Father Jack was then working as the band director at Althoff High School. Sue was teaching at the grade school in O'Fallon when a fellow teacher asked her to share an apartment. It sounded like a good plan to Sue. Our mom did not quite see why Sue would do such a thing, since she had free room and board at her parents' house. Sue thought that Jack understood she wanted to spread her wings, as most young adults want to do, so she asked him to help her with the move. As the band director, Jack had access to the school van, so he arranged to use it to help Sue move her meager belongings to her first adult home. Jack was to have a huge impact on the rest of her life. On December 31st, 1968, Jack called the house, our parents' house, to see if Sue was busy that night. The New Year's Eve plan she had made fell through, and she was destined to stay home with our parents until Jack came to her rescue. One of Jack's fellow teachers at Althoff was having a party and was in need of young ladies to attend. Sue eagerly jumped on the invite. Unbeknownst to her, she would meet her future husband, Jerry Kaler, that evening. They will be married 55 years this Halloween. And of course, Father Jack married them. If I haven't put you to sleep by now, I'd like to close with some of my own special Jack memories. My earliest memory of Jack is that he was a precocious and entertaining young boy. I remember going with Mom and Jack to Notre Dame Academy for some event when I was about 3 or 4 years old. So Jack must have been 5 or 6. I don't know what the occasion was, but there were a lot of mothers and their children there. I knew that Jack sang for the group, and Sister Kathy remembers hearing that he sang Danny Boy. I also vaguely recall that Jack would sometimes recite poems when Mom and Dad's friends visited our house. One poem that I remember Mom reciting frequently was Little Orphan Annie by James Whitcomb Riley. Mom recited it so well that I was mesmerized, and I assumed that Jack was as well. Mom frequently sang popular and show tunes around the house when we were growing up in the 40s and 50s. In addition, she and Dad would take us to productions like The King and I and South Pacific at the Muni Opera at an early age. Jack is a natural showman, and I believe that both he and Mom were the reason that I developed a love for singing that began in elementary school and has continued to this day. Brother Dan also developed a love for music at an early age and wound up receiving multiple degrees in music at the college level. He is an excellent pianist and a harpsichordist, as well as an expert in music theory. Just ask him. As the oldest of 5 children, Jack was naturally given some responsibility as caregiver for his younger siblings. I remember walking together to and from St. Elizabeth's Grade School in East St. Louis, especially when Sisters Kathy and Sue started the 1st grade. They looked so cute in their little plaid dresses. Some years later, Jack was responsible for driving Dan and me, along with 2 of his friends, to and from high school in Memphis for a couple of years. Dan and I probably learned more about Jack's teen years personal life, like which girl he liked the best, from being in the car with his 2 best friends, more than we would ever have known if we're not riding to school together. It also taught us to appreciate Jack as a protector. There were a couple of activities that Jack and I alone shared, which are special memories for me. First, we were both in the same Boy Scout troop in East St. Louis during our time at St. Elizabeth's. We enjoyed going for all-day hikes, weekend campouts, and for longer stays at Camp Vandeventer in the summertime. When we were in high school for 2 of the same years, I was recruited to join him in the Explorer Scouts organization. Next, before I started at Christian Brothers High School in Memphis, Jack had joined the all-boys glee club. Of course, when I started to the high school, I was inspired by Jack to join the group too. This was not only a lot of fun and good brother bonding time, but it also gave us an opportunity to skip classes during some school days. After ordination and his assignment to Althoff, Jack became a protector for several adult family members. Jack has done a great job at helping Brother Dan, who lived alone in our parents' home for a few years after Mom passed away in 2001. He has sometimes helped Dan manage his finances or other challenging life situations, but mainly has been a supportive and a loving brother. After Cousin Janie's husband, Noy Freeland, passed away, she was devastated. Jack spent many hours when he wasn't performing his priestly duties for a number of years thereafter, making sure that Janie's house was repaired when necessary, her bills were paid, and she was eating properly. He was constantly keeping tabs on her until she passed away, and then had to manage the disposition of her estate. Prior to Cousin Janie's difficulties, and after our mom died, Jack was frequently occupied with visiting, running errands for, and chauffeuring several elderly aunts and cousins when they could no longer drive themselves. Even though my wife Jan and I moved with our 4 children to the Chicago area 48 years ago, Jack has baptized all 10 of our grandchildren and has been generous in remembering important events in their lives. I will always be grateful for having him as a kind and wise older brother. Jack, on behalf of our family and all of those students and parishioners who are not here today, congratulations on 60 years of service to God. I'm sure that Mom and Dad are looking down on you right now, bursting with pride. I, and I'm sure many others in this room, love you. Thank you.